This is What School Didn't Teach Me, a podcast meant to build community on all the things school doesn't prepare you for. Hi, I'm your host, Jasmine Kiamber, and class is in session. Welcome to the classroom. I'm your host, Jasmine Camber, and welcome to another episode of What School Didn't Teach Me. I'm so excited that you are here with us. I don't know how you found us, but I'm so glad you did. For those of you who don't know, What School Didn't Teach Me is a space where we are here to build community. I started What School Didn't Teach Me because I saw a lot of people kind of going through the same things, but nobody was really talking about it. And I just felt like, why not create a space where we can talk about the things that we are learning in the school of life together, right? There are so many things that, school doesn't teach you. They teach you English, math, history, but they don't teach you about yourself. They don't teach you about personal development, how to maintain relationships. Those are all the things that we have to learn along the way. So why not learn those things together? Again, I don't know how you found us, but I'm glad you did. Each season of What School Didn't Teach Me, we have a new theme, or at least for the past 2 seasons, we've maintained a theme. The theme for this season is represent and represent. So showing up as an authentic form of yourself, as a form of representation, but then acknowledging that it's a journey to become the person you want to be, right? We don't want to dismiss the journey along the way. And so I'm so excited for the rest of this season, but I'm specifically excited for today's episode because I know you see I'm not alone. Today I have the Siobhan Gallagher, author of Full of Myself, a graphic novel about body image. And I just want us to be all ears because I'm excited to have her and I'm excited for her for the gems that she's about to drop to y'all. So Siobhan, please introduce yourself or tell us more about you.
Yay, thank you so much. So I am Siobhan Gallagher. I'm from Canada. I'm an illustrator and author and designer. I've written a few books, and the most recent one came out last April 2024. Called Full of Myself, and it's all about body image and body dysmorphia and kind of societal expectations on women and how pop culture of like my childhood sort of influenced a lot of the sort of fat phobic rhetoric that I've has kind of ingrained itself into my life and into so many other people's lives. And it's funny because like the subject matter of the book is pretty kind of dark but relatable. And I feel like a lot of my work is pretty light. So it is a serious subject matter, but I try to do it as funnily as I can. As I try to like kind of deal with all my work through kind of a sense of humor.
Yeah. And quite honestly, I agree. It is a dark subject, or at least it's a sensitive subject. It's one that you kind of have to tread lightly on, but uh, it felt light. It was like
Okay,
I
good.
was as a reader, right? As a reader, I was able to absorb the message that you were trying to send without feeling a weight. Like I actually reviewed, we have a segment on What School Didn't Teach Me called First 30 Pages, where like I read books, I tell the classmates about it, I tell them if they like it, if I like it. And so I reviewed First 30 Pages, and so I reviewed Full of Myself. And one of the first things I said was like I read the book in 3 days. Like quite literally picked, and I didn't even expect to grab the book. I was in the library and I happened to meet the director and he took me to the graphic novel section and I was like, this is a bright pink book and it is calling my name. It's like, it is calling my name. Picked it up and I was like, whoa, these graphics are really good. Like, this book is beautiful. Didn't know what to expect and couldn't put it down. So no.
I am so glad. I love that you found it at a library. I mean you already know this because you read the book, but I used to work at a library as a
Yes.
teenager and oh yeah, it's just I'm glad they exist.
Yeah, it's like a full circle moment.
Yeah, oh my God,
So,
true.
so to that, y'all, support your local libraries because there are so many different ways to support your local libraries. Get an account, get Libby, get Hoopla, go inside, talk to the people who work there. Like, keep our libraries alive, please.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I could literally fangirl over the book for the next 30 minutes, so I won't do that. Um, I wanted to ask, you kind of told us a little bit about the inspiration behind your book and how it was kind of it was a large part of it was the media's effect on kind of your outlook on self-image and like your upbringing in adolescence, how the media affected that. I would love to hear more about that experience.
Yeah, I mean, I am still a big fan and follower and obsessor of pop culture. So I am not anti pop culture and media. But when I kind of reflect on a lot of the like movies and TV shows and music and magazines that I loved as a like young teenager and tween growing up. I was born in '89, so like the year 2000, I was age 11. That's when I was like really getting
Oh yeah.
into teen book like or teen magazines. Like J14 magazine and like Twist and 17 mag
Yes.
and I was that's when I also started watching like Friends on TV. Like that's when I feel like age 11 was like, ooh, I'm still a child, but I'm kind of growing into like what is
Yes.
a grown up and being more interested in what do grown ups sort of partake in.
Yes.
And I loved all of that. Like I loved poring over my magazines and my TV shows. But the thing is, media is not your friend. And like, so as a teenager, you can't look at it as only like, this is how I should be. Like this is a
Yes.
reflection of what should be. It's the ideal. It is the like sort of goal to have, and that's not the case. Like media is, I mean, it's storytelling and it's jokes and it's fun, but it's also like there are advertisers there that are trying to
Push an
prey on your
agenda.
weaknesses. Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. Like, and um there are jokes being written by, middle-aged men who only have a very specific point of view, and they are being then sort of retold through actresses aimed towards teen girls. um, and so it's, I don't know, it's very insidious. So just reflecting on, I mean, pop culture and media in general, but especially in the early 2000s when it was kind of the Wild West. It's, I don't know, just looking back on it, it's the Wild West of like, I don't know, like using sexuality in media and really using like sort of fashion trends I don't know, against women almost. I don't know. I'm kind of rambling now, but it's that was kind of looking back on that time was really the kind of like um, jumping off point, because that I was also like, since I was so young around that time, that was also when I was starting to keep diaries,
Right.
and reading through those diaries from that time kind of really made me realize like, oh, like 80% of what I talked about was like being unhappy with how I looked or like how I felt I was perceived. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of that had to do with, yeah, I don't know. I mean, just being kind of fed this supposed ideal that I knew I wasn't meeting, you know?
Yeah. 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 And you know what? I also read J14 magazines. And so when you were talking about the media being pushed out and picking up certain teen magazines and how you look at these magazines and you're like, this is what I should be. This is what I should look like. This is how I should act. J14 immediately came to my mind. And then you said it. And so that was a special moment for me just now in my brain.
Oh,
Yes, I also read J14 magazines, and recently I found one. Like I used to have a whole subscription because at age like 9, 10, 11, it was like, what else is there to do besides obsess over celebrities who, are, physically only a couple of years older than me, but are in an entire industry where they are now being fed things that aren't necessarily realistic, right? But I don't know that,
yeah.
I don't know that as a young person. So I recently found one of my magazines and I was looking at it and they had like a whole segment and it was like, celebs are just like us, and it was
Oh,
a
of course.
whole
Yes.
segment about how it was a whole segment of like celebrities doing regular things, but they would be maybe like dressed down or like, that outfit that you wear when you like hope nobody sees you. So like they would
Yes.
be dressed in maybe something like that, and they would specifically project those images and be like, they are not necessarily out of their element, but they're not as polished. You know what I mean?
It's like
Almost like
taking
trying
them
to catch
off
the
of the pedestal, kind of like
but
they're
but
lowering.
yes, taking them off of the pedestal, but almost in like a not a degrading way, but almost not in a not in an uplifting way either. And so yes, I am with you on, being a young teenager or being a tween and obsessing over what you see and then not looking like that and internalizing it. I actually was just talking. I was talking to somebody um earlier this week, and we were talking about social media's impact on us specifically as Black women, but as just young women, like what the experience like as a young person was. And so when I was growing up, when I hit like middle school, that's when Snapchat got introduced. So I was probably like
Okay.
right. So I was probably like 12 when I got a Snapchat. And so the person was asking me, or the question was, what was the impact that social media had on you as a youth, and then what would you tell your younger self? And the first thing I thought of was that
Mm.
social media is not going to give you this step-by-step guide on who you should be. Like social media, although we look at these people from the outside looking in, it's not like, okay, they wear their makeup flawlessly. So if I follow them, I'm going to wear my makeup flawlessly. No, like they have had a makeup routine that they've perfected over the span of years. They are getting their ideas from somewhere. Their face looks like that because their face looks like that. Like nobody can give you this step by step on what you should be doing, what you should look like. And so when you mentioned that just now, yes, that is definitely something that I feel like we should be picking up from the media. Like we are not going to find ourselves looking through social media and TV.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And like, or at least we will, but it won't be from a single a celebrity. Like it will be like learning, like kind of just like life. Like you learn, you magpie, you
Yes.
learn one little lesson from someone, and like you learn another thing, and then you make a huge mistake, and then you learn a lesson from that. It's not,
Yes.
yeah, it's not going to be some like obsessing over a celebrity and then trying to emulate them and then believing that that will lead to I will be happy like them, right?
Yes. Yes. I definitely think that's how I grew up thinking. Like if I could just act like Selena Gomez, I will be okay. That is not my truth. That is not my life.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
Okay, so I love I love that we're moving from one thing to the next because you specifically mentioned kind of the media being portrayed, kind of the idea of women being perceived by young people, but being written by somebody who maybe is not in the demographic, but is attracted to the demographic or attracted to a certain kind of demographic. And therefore is pushing, like we said earlier, pushing that sort of agenda that all women or all people should look like this. Um, do you feel like that has changed since the early 2000s? And how?
I mean I think definitely because they I don't know, this is a really like frustrating time in America. So
Yeah.
it's I want to talk about so much that's like happening right now, but I guess in general, I mean, it is no secret and not really deniable that like old white men have been in charge of, you know, laws, policies, the country, a lot of, media, the movie industry, like everything. So you are not going to find like as a young girl, as a young like white Canadian girl, I'm not going to find relatable characters or people that are being portrayed accurately um in every like piece of media that I consume and
Yeah.
in most pieces of media and especially not in like the early 2000s. I think it's definitely improved, but there's still, I mean, there are still boys clubs. There are still
Yes.
um like I mean, I feel like a lot of places were moving forward with having great programs that kind of like uplifted minority voices and kind of didn't prioritize like oh, so and so's son is could do a great job with this, like let's hire him, like not, I don't know, I had this idealized like I guess a fantasy now that like we were moving away from that, that it was not, it was going to be more like voices being heard on a merit based and like more women. And I think that we are still moving towards that, but not enough. Like it is definitely I think improved since I was a kid, but it is still not enough. Like it's just not enough to have like um one person of
Yes.
color and maybe one woman like on a writer's staff or whatever. If it's like, 10 people or 5 people, it should be there just should be more representation. So anyways, I'm going off on a tangent again. But when it comes to, I don't know, it's funny because like I feel like you see culture always go in these like huge swings.
Yes.
So there was a huge swing in the early 2000s of like male driven, male dominated sort of fantasy media. So like Girls Gone Wild and
Mm-hmm.
just like a lot of like misogyny, but like played off as like in good fun. And so I think there has been a swing to avoid that because we now look back on things that were filmed like, even just 10 years ago, 10 plus years ago. And we kind of like see like, ooh, like you should not be using that word. You should not be using that descriptor. Not because of like woke culture, but just because that's offensive. It's like
It's not
it's not
kind,
funny.
right?
Yeah, and it is if it's punching down, like it's not that everything needs to be kind, but if you're punching
Right.
down to someone that's already been portrayed in such a poor light through tropes, through just like these cliches in like story writing and stuff. It's not fun. I don't know. It's like it's not funny. It's not smart. So anyways, I feel like there has been a swing at least against that. But because there are always these like back and forth swings, I'm really hoping that we haven't hit that peak of uh, you know, hitting the diversity quota. And now people are like, oh, well, we already
Yes.
did that and we don't like that. And now actually, like, more white men should be. Ugh. It is. It is infuriating because I mean, a year ago, maybe I was thinking, like, yeah, we're on the up and up. And now it is harder to feel positive. But I think the more people there are like you who are interested in uplifting those voices and creating a community and creating space and like calling for a need for that. I hope that we haven't like hit that peak and that we won't see as much. I hope that it's still you know progressing. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I am not letting you speak. I am just like ranting right
No, 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 no,
now.
no, no. I want to hear what you have to say because quite honestly, you're quite honestly, that's not something I've thought about. I don't think I ever thought about our culture being like waves. Like when I hear people talking about culture, I hear them almost talk about it like in cycles. So like what's done, what has been done
Yes.
before will be done again. Like that nothing is new. Like when it comes to hairstyles and clothes and this, that, and the third, like that stuff is not new. It's been done before, but I've never heard it be talked about in waves. And I one should keep my eye out more because what I do notice in the media is yes, there's more representation as far as women being portrayed in a positive light over the media, but then equally I see a lot more and I'm going to be quite frank, sex sells in the media
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
of
Yeah. Yeah.
course the main you know focal point of that is a woman, and that can be really objective as well. So it's like I don't think maybe I haven't given us enough credit for the positivity that we like, how far we've come and the positivity that there is. But I will admit, concerned because there will always be more work to do. And
Yeah.
I think that's the
Yeah.
hard part. Like we don't want to discredit the work that has already been done to acknowledge diversity in writing rooms, on TV, on commercials, in companies, like in the store. Like, we don't want to discredit the diversity that has grown, or the amount of diversity that has grown. But in my head, it's like, okay, but there is still so much more work to do to show representation for everybody.
Yeah. And it's funny, like this is something that I think I mentioned in my book about how growing up, um, it was all like girl power was a big phrase because it was during like Spice Girls but I mean, like you kind of said, like it's like it was framed in this way where it's like girl power means like being very sexual, or like
Yes.
being very sexualized, like kind of like always knowing your, I don't know, it's funny because it's like it still kind of meant knowing your place, but like being sassy about it. Like it wasn't even uh I don't know. It's just it's such a funny because it's like this Y2K version of like feminism
Mhm.
where like, 30 years before that it was like the bra burning sort of era of
Okay,
feminism.
yes.
And like every kind of era is aiming for the same thing. Like it's aiming for equality, but through these different like kind of eye grabby ways, or like at least that's what the media, that's what like people kind of latch onto of like,
Mhm.
oh, like girl power means like wearing a mini skirt but saying like girls rule the world, when really it's like, but also like you can be a conventionally unattractive woman and still be like girl power,
Yes.
uh but it won't be received the same way, it won't be like kind of embraced that same way. So um yeah, like I thought that as a kid, like the fact that I even knew about feminism as a 10-year-old, I was like, that means everyone knows that. That means
Mm.
it is a popular thing. Like the fact that I'm even aware about it means like success in my mind. And then like years later, and then I don't know, I feel like then it was like during the Obama years of America, it's like, oh, like people, I don't know, maybe that kind of made people feel more entitled to like joking about or like putting down certain things because they thought things had gotten so much better. But then
Yeah.
there's this, always that back and forth of like you're always in conversation with what's happened, but then while you are reflecting on what has come, new things pop up. Like
Yes.
the idea of trad wife is now a thing. When I like a year ago, I hadn't that wasn't really like in my vernacular. And there's always these new, yeah. It's like two steps forward, one step back,
Right. It's always something to
and you
tackle.
can't, there's always something. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm with you. And I guess that's what makes it so hard to manage, or that's such a hard thing about life. And I hate to like act like that, but that's the hard thing about life. It's like you get a hold of it, you get a hold of like people calling women b words and this, that, and the third.
Yeah.
But then it's like, oh, but there's this other word, and it's like, wait a minute, we just, yeah, we
Yeah. I mean, it's like the news right now. It's like can the world events just like slow down for a second?
yes,
Like the just when I was getting a handle on this one thing, like this new disaster happens. Um
yes,
and it's funny like just thinking of that when I was a kid, I feel like in history classes when we'd be learning about world history and learning about like different moments, historical moments happening around the same time but in different countries, and me just being like, "Oh, things were happening simultaneously and like without
yes,
everyone being aware of it." It's just, I mean, duh, like that is obvious. But when you actually think about it, it's like, oh, there are, just while I'm trying to get a handle on like my perception of the world, there are sticks being thrown into, you
yes.
know, cogs everywhere that are throwing everything off that I'm not even aware of.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm with you. I'm with you. It blows my mind. History used to be my favorite subject, and it blows my mind how we are constantly living in something that will be written in a history book. Like,
Yeah.
the amount of worldly events that will be written in my lifetime blows my mind. So
Yeah. Yes, I hear you.
yeah. And so I wanted to go back because you talked about girl power, and you talked about girl power being like, yes, love women, love yourself, but also like like you said, yes, being sassy, but like wear a mini skirt or like like seduce this man or whatever it was, right? But then you absorbing that as a young person, as like a teen or a tween. And then that reflecting in your life. Like you talked about it in the book, but I would love to hear more about how that portrayal of being a woman, meaning being provocative or being sexual, kind of impacted your upbringing or your idea about yourself.
I I mean, I think it definitely did. And for through kind of like a number of ways. I think it was also, I mean, I was the firstborn and the only daughter. So
Yeah.
I think the fact that I was the only like sort of girl in my family, I mean, apart from my mom, but it's like, I don't know. So having no real frame of reference of, um, from other like close family members apart from my mom, especially because I also had lots of friends that had like older sisters, so they had
Hmm.
someone that they could kind of observe and like learn from, while I just had this, I feel like I just had this kind of like TV version of what a woman should be, and
Hmm.
that meant being sexualized. And I was not, I don't know, I am not against, I'm not sex negative. Like I
Right.
think
Yes.
definitely like be sexual and be sexy, but find what makes you feel sexualized and sexy. Don't just try to please the male gaze, which is very much what I feel like I grew up with. It was, I don't know, it's like there's this certain type of feminism that like people disapprove of and approve of. Like there's
Yeah.
the feminism uh of I don't know, like just keeping women in a certain place. And it's like, oh yeah, like, oh, you're what a great businesswoman, but and I'll support you, but as long as you don't, I don't start to believe that you're feeling too big for your britches or something. Like it's, there's
Hmm.
just so many, I don't know, so many ways that that everyone is being told how we should be, but especially how we should not be. And so
Yeah.
if you're being fed, and again, through like advertising and through like TV media and Hollywood media, you are being fed this very specific, uh, unrealistic version of all of these shoulds. And I was kind of, I was very um, beholden to those. Like you're told how you should be, but I also knew that I was a feminist. But it's like I want to be, I grew up wanting to be supportive of women, but also being appealing to men,
Yeah.
physically. And like you are, girls, I think, kind of realize that of like much younger than boys, that like they are kind of being watched way more. And they're
Yes.
being watched in a very
Yes.
specific way, in a very different way.
Yes.
And it's like, I don't know, some people respond to it by ignoring it, or some people kind of are able to I don't know, like grow around that, like kind of like try to avoid that hindering them, or not letting it influence them. And I kind of thought that I was doing that for so long. I thought that I was being self-aware, and I was, but it's like you're kind of looking, I was being self-aware of this kind of image that I was expected to be. And but I was, because I felt I was aware of it, I didn't think that it was that bad. I don't know. I'm like kind of, again, I'm rambling, but it's like I thought because I was aware of um advertisements trying to like feed off me, that I was not going to be sucked into it. But I mean, like
Hmm.
you're
Or
part of
affected
society,
by
like
it.
you're sucked into
Yeah.
it kind of no matter what.
Yeah.
Um and it's, yeah, I feel like it was kind of only years later do you kind of like, only when you're out of something do you kind of realize, like only when you step out of water do you realize like, oh, like I was
Yes.
wet, like that was wet.
Yes.
Because when you're in it, it's like this is just how things are. Like people just make misogynist jokes, and they don't get punished for it because like that's just the way it is.
Yes.
But if we keep kind of believing that that's just the way it is, and like shrugging our shoulders, acknowledging it isn't enough. It's changing it
Mm-hmm.
that actually needs to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
that I feel like because I was, I guess, acknowledging it growing up, I thought that I was, I don't know, helping or not even helping, but like at least acknowledgement was something. And it's like maybe it
Mm-hmm.
is, but you need to do more. And that's kind of challenging it is the next step.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. Acknowledgement does not necessarily lead to change. And right, it's not until you step out of it that you realize how bad it was. I think for me, man, I this makes me think I should do a whole lot more reflection, because I think for me, like because I think for me growing up, like there weren't a lot of people who oh there weren't a lot of people on the media who necessarily looked like me, but there were people on the media who I felt like I could admire. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. There were people on the media that I feel like I could admire, or whose lives maybe looked like the lives that I wanted to live. And I think, especially after I got introduced to social media, it was like, oh, okay, because I am not living life like them, I am not doing enough. Or because I don't have XYZ that they have, I am not attractive. Like on TV, all the girls in high school had boyfriends. So then in my head, it's like, oh, okay, well, if I'm in high school, and even before then, if I am in school and I don't have a boyfriend, that means I am not attractive, or that means nobody likes me, or that means I'm not
Something is wrong
funny
with
enough.
me.
Yes. Yes. And I think for me, I didn't always care on the forefront what people thought about me, or at least I thought I didn't, right? So like I would say, like, I do what I want, I have no shame. Like that was a phrase that I actually coined in middle school. Now I try not to say things like that anymore, but it was like
Oh my God, I wish I was like you. Oh, that's as a middle schooler, that's an amazing mantra.
it is amazing until you get in trouble at doing something you shouldn't have been
That's
doing in the first
so
place.
funny. Yeah.
But I think for me it was like I did not necessarily let the people who were directly to the left and to the right of me affect me. But then when I would watch TV and I didn't have what they had, like my life was not the way life was portrayed on maybe That's So Raven, or like Wizards of Waverly Place. Like I didn't expect to have powers, but it was like Alex Russo. She was so cool and spicy and spunky, and all the boys liked her. Well, if my life didn't look like that, then like you said, something was wrong with me. And I think that's something that kind of I didn't even know was happening to me until, like you said, you step out of it and you realize, oh, okay, well now I need to be who I want to be for myself. I didn't even realize that I was picking up parts of my personality from what I was seeing on TV.
Yeah. And I mean, there's the good and the bad of that. Like the bad is kind of picking up all the wrong lessons and all the wrong, or like picking up insecurities from it. But the good thing is, I mean, that's the fun part of like media and TV. It's that it like you are it's not a real community because you are not having conversations with these,
Right.
TV shows, but like you are still like picking up little pieces that maybe unconsciously become little like you adapt a little phrase from a TV show and then like that becomes like you like tweak a little bit and then friends of yours like they hear that phrase and think of you and it becomes like a bigger thing than just something from a TV show. And that is I don't know, like that can be such a like cool thing seeing how like where our influences come from and what
Mm-hmm.
inspires us and what we consciously or subconsciously kind of like adopt from people from like friends or celebrities or like even podcasts now like sometimes
Yeah.
I listen to some podcasts so often that like the way their cadence of like some phrases that they say I then realize I'm saying in my everyday life and I'm like oh like I guess that's a thing that I do now. So it's like I don't know there's the good and bad side of that and like when
Yeah.
you think of um art making, I love to kind of see. like you collect these like favorite artists, whether it's like singers or visual artists or directors, and then you kind of you see what of theirs you can kind of try to do, like
Hmm.
whether it's like a style or an aesthetic or something. And the way it's like a filter, like you take what they have done and what you appreciate about them, and you filter it through your own, like you jasminify something or you Siobhanify something. And even
Hmm.
though it's not, it's like I was obsessed with like the Royal Tenenbaums, like the movie,
Hmm.
and there's that very specific Wes Anderson vibe and aesthetic. But no one, I don't know, it would be really trite and boring and obvious
Yeah.
if I just started making art that looked exactly like his. But because I'm not a director or filmmaker, I'm an illustrator, some
Hmm.
of that like kind of gets interpreted through, like through, like you pick up these influences. And I think that is like a fun, cool part of pop culture. But then,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, there's the bad side where it's like you can obviously take the wrong pieces of something or interpret things, negatively, or like take it personally as a way of like, I am not exactly like that person, and that is a flaw in me, as opposed to that is so inspiring, how can I do my own version of that?
No, yeah, and honestly, I love that you said that because right, I don't want to get so caught up being like, yes, social media is bad, TV is bad, XYZ, XYZ, because the goal is not to turn people away from these things, but more so to mm, figure out how to make them help you instead of harm you. And so yes, like I think I don't even acknowledge as much as I should like some parts of like some shows and some things, they're quite literally a part of me because they are part of my upbringing. And so the parts that are not like, oh, okay, I'm not like them, so something's wrong with me, are like I am quite spunky and I do have a smart mouth sometimes. And there are some things that I'm working on about myself. But I learned that it was okay for me to express myself a certain way or to be a certain to a level of like to have a certain level of assertiveness from Alex Russo. Like
Yeah.
she quite literally walked around. And I know I'm talking about Selena Gomez so much. Selena, if you watch this, we love you, girl. But like you're right. There are certain pieces of media and culture that do bring us as a community closer together. Like if you think
Yeah.
about the Shrek franchise and how quickly
Oh
people
my
are to
God.
band together over Shrek, like that is something so completely unexpected, but it does create community. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and like spanning generations. Like I love the Shrek craze. Like that is a swing that I approve of, because that, I
Yes.
mean, like that came out in 2001, like this kind of like Y2K era that I feel like was very pivotal for me. And yeah, that Shrek, I feel like that as a kid I was like, "Oh, this is comedy. This is humor. This is hilarious. Like this is unlocking like a new appreciation for jokes for me."
Yeah. Yeah. Um and so I wanted to ask, like I specifically wrote down this question because I wanted to ask. A couple of minutes ago, we were just talking about how important it is to expand diversity in certain spaces, especially the media, right? Especially what we are absorbing on an everyday. And I want to know from your thoughts, what impact do you think that will have on? Well, I guess specifically, what impact you think that would have had on little Siobhan, like the young lady who was writing those journals and paying so much attention to the media and the magazines. What do you think having people who looked like you or maybe was from this, like we're also from Canada, like what do you think that would have done for your like look itself?
I yeah, I feel like there were the kind of characters that I gravitated towards were the sort of weirdo characters.
With
And
you, yes.
usually in media in like the 90s, or up to that point, the weirdo characters were men. It was like those were the kind of like tortured characters Whereas the
Okay.
weirdo girls, there were just fewer weirdo girls, or at least I don't know. I like what come to mind were like Daria and like Lisa Simpson.
I love Daria. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, and like Lizzie
Yeah.
McGuire. I don't know, like and
Yes.
she was, I mean, she was kind of a normal weirdo. Like she was the blonde weirdo, like as weird as a
Yes.
blonde can be, I guess.
Yeah.
Like at that point, that was as weird as blondes were allowed to be. But like these, I don't know, and some of them, I don't know, like another thing that I mentioned in my book, I loved the movie Annie Hall growing up, which was like from the 70s,
Mm-hmm.
but it was written and directed by Woody Allen, who is a like creepy, like the culture has come to learn and kind of become more public, like things about him where it's like, I don't want to identify with a character made by him. Like, I don't want that to be the main character that I think of when I think of like the kind of cool, weird girl.
Mm-hmm.
But I think what really I mean, not sort of like backing outside of like just the kind of characters that I was drawn to, it the more variety of sort of characters or of people that we see portrayed, it just broadens our possibilities of what our idea of could or our idea of
Yes.
should.
Yeah.
Like the coulds and the shoulds that have like held me back in my life because I didn't think I could do something or I shouldn't, I thought, didn't think that I like should do something because I had not seen someone like me do that before. Even, and I mean, this is not even coming from a like, I'm not an actress, so I'm not like, I want to be an actress, but no actress has been like me before. Like, this is coming from just like what a woman should be. Like,
Right.
just thinking of what
Yes.
a woman, a person like me, who I did not think, like, as a kid, I was not outgoing. I was shy, but I had things to say, but I didn't know how, and just kind of like seeing the all the cool girls or all the weird girls on TV were still like always slim figured people, and just that like broadening the version of the type of person that's on screen or the type of person that we like see, it just, I don't know, it just broadens our yeah, this is me now just like looping around like
No, no,
this
no, no.
concept of
I'm with
like,
you.
yeah, of who, imagining who we could be, because I that's what I really, I don't know, I was a kid obsessed with like picturing my future and obsessed with growing up, and so I was like, okay, Carrie Bradshaw, that's who I can be, like that's my reference, I guess, of like a woman in the city, and
Yeah.
that's my only reference. It's like you can be a
Mhm.
mom or you can be Carrie Bradshaw.
Yes.
Like you can be a
Yes.
sitcom mom or a like slut, like that's it.
Yeah.
So it's really, yeah, it's just seeing more people, because like I'm from a small town in Canada, so it's not like I was seeing anyone in a big city.
Mm-hmm.
So like what does that look like? Because that's who I wanted to be. So who does she look like? If it's
Mm-hmm.
not, if I'm not Carrie Bradshaw and I'm not like Deborah from Everybody Loves Raymond, like who is a woman in her 30s, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you create your own kind of image?
How? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know. And again, I'm kind of going back to, I did say that I think it is getting better. Like there are more voices and more storytellers that kind of don't fit that white man
Yeah.
demographic, that white man like standard. But still not enough. I don't think there are. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm with you. And I think that's why, like I was saying literally in the episode right before this one, that your book Full of Myself was a part of my decision to make this season be like, representation, or represent and represent, because I had thought about it, like literally working on season 3, thought about the theme for season 4 and just locked it in. But then after reading Full of Myself and realizing or recognizing how important it was for me to, as I literally said earlier, show up authentically, because it gives somebody else permission to show up. Like if I show up as who I really want to be, then like you said, I not in like this I'm someone's idol type of way, but in a sense of we do need to broaden our perspectives on who we can be. Like we do need,
Yes.
sometimes we do need a little permission, like, you know what, they tell me I can't mix I can't wear gold jewelry and silver jewelry, but other people do it. So why should that ever stop me? You know, like, and after reading Full of Myself, it further, like, it made my little heart pump. Like it further
Yeah.
emphasized to me why it's so important for us to really like show up as who we want to be, like to show up as who we want to be, to give other people permission. Like we can all just, we don't have to be in this cookie cutter box of what we see. We can create our own
Yes.
story, who we want to be. Yeah.
That is, yeah. You damn. I what was there were something that you said like 5 seconds ago. I was like, I don't want to interrupt her, but and now I forget what I was gonna say.
Dang. Reading
Oh,
your book with, oh, go ahead.
oh, sorry. Showing. Okay, yeah. No, sorry. I got it. The I think it's also important. Like, so we all have this kind of idealized version of who we want to be, and we can kind of get frustrated when we do not meet those expectations, whether it's like, I don't know, whether it's like, oh, this project that I really, this drawing that I really had high hopes for, I didn't do what I wished I had done. Or like, damn, like I feel so slobby lately and I'm not like wearing all those cute dresses I have in my closet. But sometimes even, or like, I don't know, like I talked too much at dinner last night. Like, why? I don't know, just all these things that we kind of like, these shoulds of like what we think we should be all the time.
Yeah.
It's so freeing to see someone else sometimes be
Yes.
not their ideal self. Like if it's like I don't know, like done is better than perfect. You know, like
Yes.
I wish I had done a better job on this drawing, but instead of like scrapping it and not showing anyone, I'm just gonna like I'll post it or I will submit it because like I did it. So and then I don't know, because those like as a kind of like perfectionist and as a uh someone who's kind of doesn't always believe damn, I'm my mind is like mush today. What's the word for when you feel like you are in a position that you don't deserve?
Like imposter syndrome.
Yes, thank you. Like imposter syndrome and like perfectionism, that by like having that and kind of that having that control, I guess, what I put out there, then that limits, I don't know, it limits like your reach and it limits what you like, who you can meet and what you can get out there because it doesn't meet your standards of perfection. And
Yes.
I'm kind of all over the place. I'm like being vague because like
No, no,
again, this
no.
can apply to like projects, but also like I don't know, like my book, like my book, I'm like, it's almost a year since it came out and I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, there's some things that I wish I could have changed from in like just art wise. But it's like have the confidence of a mediocre white male and just accept, like
Yes.
have that mentality sometimes because like sometimes the people who should be doubting themselves are not the people that are doubting themselves. And oftentimes people that are like self-doubtful and like oh like holding back, holding their tongue are the people who like should be speaking more freely. And I'm kind of, yeah, I'm trying to, I don't know, carry that through where I'm like even in conversations where it's like, oh, they don't want to hear from me. Well, say it anyway. Like maybe they do want to hear
Yes.
from me, and maybe this will help someone. My rambling,
No, 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 no. You. I hear what you're saying, and I completely agree. And I think that's something that I have struggled with my whole life, right? And I think a large part, I think that's something I've struggled with my whole life. I think I have let my internal voice, and I think I noticed this like in college. That's when I really noticed it. Like I had let my internal voice of, oh, people don't want to hear from you. Oh, you're talking too much. Oh, you're doing this. Oh, you're taking up, like, ultimately this idea of like taking up too much space, or like the fear of not being enough. I think I let that affect me a whole lot. And so then when I got to spaces
Yes.
where people wanted to hear what I had to say, or I was in leadership positions, so I had to take up space and I had to take charge. It was like almost like this fear of, I know what I can do, but I don't know if I'll be received well. And
Yes.
you're right. Sometimes the things that you say, the things that you put out, the things that you are afraid of are exactly what somebody else needs to hear or
Yes,
see.
yeah, because my my kind of perception of my ideal self is unobtainable, and like no one else knows that version of my like perfect ideal version of myself. So like my me on a bad day could still to someone else be like, oh, like she's fine, she's great, like that was amazing, like you
Yes. Yeah.
and that also goes like the other way around, where like you can meet someone who's a true asshole and he'll be like, I am so funny, and you'll be like, he is not self-aware and he
Not
sucks,
really.
like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, it's just really it's trying to like, yeah, I don't know. It's funny. The more you kind of grow and the more you live and the more you age, the more people you meet and the more you kind of be like, oh, like there's someone going around the world living like that, and he does not doubt himself once
Yes.
and
Yeah.
has no remorse for things, and you just kind of think like, I don't want to live like that. I don't want to feel no remorse or feel no self-reflection, but like I could give myself a little grace,
Yes. Yes.
for what other people are like getting away with. Like I don't need to be so hard on myself for
Yeah.
things that don't matter and that are outside of my I don't know what I'm my abilities.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. I I agree. I agree. You saying that there is somebody out there that should feel shame and shouldn't, it's really cracking me up.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean that's kind of I guess the positive of like bad people in positions of power then like fuels something at like it's
Yes.
like, oh, it's a reminder that there is work to be done. There
Yes.
is more that needs, it's not, yeah, it's like what I was saying earlier. It's not enough just to acknowledge it. It's like, oh, like this is, it's
Somebody has to
got
do
to
something.
change. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I wanted to talk a little more about some of the things you put in your book. I'm kind of shifting the conversation because now I'd like to
Yeah.
talk about the book a little bit. Because one thing I remember you mentioning towards the later parts of your book. So when I was reading Full of Myself, you talked a lot about, your adolescence and how the media kind of affected your outlook on almost like self-perception. And then kind of some of the things that kind of followed that, which, like you were saying earlier, like body dysmorphia, like, certain eating disorders and your journey on, well, if you're comfortable, I would love to hear you talk about that experience. But, you also talked about your journey, not necessarily coming out of it, because it's not like something that just goes away, but it is something that you start to like forgive yourself for. Like you said, give yourself grace for. And I think a lot of people, I have not struggled with an eating disorder, but I've struggled with my mental health throughout the course of my life. And so for me, a large part of overcoming or keeping my feelings at bay, keeping those dark thoughts at bay is forgiveness and overcoming shame. And so I feel like that is where I really started to get emotional reading, because that is where I saw a lot of myself in your writing. And so I wanted you to talk a little more about that experience, overcoming that shame, and what that's like for you. Yes, in the beginning of your journey, but also now.
Well, thank you for the kind words. It's yeah, I don't know. It's a funny thing to talk about, um, because it is like ebbs and flows. Like it's not like I'm done with my like body dysmorphia now. Like it's not like checked that mark and closed that
Right.
chapter and onto like a whole new life. But it's, I don't know. I think a big like kind of breakthrough for me and something that I'm sure I had heard my whole life, but it kind of, I don't know, something kind of like just clicked one day where I realized, like, so in my mind, I always kind of had this mentality of the world where like everyone else knew what they were doing and I
Yes.
didn't. So there's that imposter syndrome of like
Yes.
everyone, even if everyone is like winging it. They're at least like winging it confidently, and they seem to be doing it. I don't know. They're passing. Like that was, and like that kind of the sort of passing term can apply to like different like situations and demographics. But like in this way, it's almost like everyone else knows how to just be normal or how to be like accepted, I guess, or how to seem accepted. And I feel like I was always kind of going through these layers of lenses where it's like I am seeing myself through their eyes, I'm seeing myself through my eyes. Like I feel like I'm a piece of shit, so they must be thinking that, but they're not reacting like I am, so they're actually hiding the fact that they think that. So it's really awkward that we're both aware that they know and I know that I'm dumb and terrible, but no one's acknowledging it. I don't know, there's just like so many layers of shame. And to finally kind of clue um in my 20s, like, oh, everyone, I mean, not everyone has, body dysmorphia or like the same levels of anxiety as I have, but like everyone has something going on. And I mean, like, it's so like it's so obvious, but
But in
everyone
those
has an
experiences, we don't
issue.
think about that.
Yes. Yeah, and it's like maybe not everyone has an like an image, body image issue, but everyone has like that kind of trigger or that kind of thing in them where they don't see things clearly, or they can't see things the way they are. And maybe that's like kind of what we were saying, where someone is like oblivious to the fact that they're a dick, or maybe it's that like they have nothing. I don't know, like it sounds kind of dismissive to say like it's all in your mind, like it's all in your head, like you don't need to feel insecure, it's all in your head. But like everyone kind of has something that is just in their head, and when you look at someone else's like issue, you kind of take it and you're like, oh, that's fine. Like I don't see that. Like you think you
Yes.
are too big. Like I don't see that. Like
Yeah.
I'm in my head because I feel I didn't put on deodorant today, so I feel like I'm stinking. And I think that you think I smell bad. I'm not looking at your body in any kind of negative way. Like it's almost it's it's sad kind of to realize sometimes like, oh, everyone is self-obsessed and no one's actually thinking about me, but that's also very freeing to finally like realize no one cares about me in that way.
Yeah.
um and I think, yeah, like there were there were a ton of things that I think like led me to that realization, of just like, and I think part of it was like being in New York and being on the subway and just seeing so many strangers all the time, and kind of just like watching strangers and seeing them in their own world. And like I don't know, I'm hyper focused on like what's in my own head, but I don't know anything that's going on in anyone else's mind right now.
Yes.
um and it's like I'm whatever they are worrying about, I don't see, so whatever I'm worrying about, they don't see. I don't know,
Yes.
it's I used to think, and maybe I still kind of do, like it's good how self-aware I am, or how self-aware I believe I am. But then that also like that literally means like I'm aware of myself. I'm like in my head. So I don't know. It's like a weakness and a superpower sometimes, where it's like I do not need to be so like self-conscious and self-aware. Like just I don't know, like, give myself some slack sometimes. So again, like
Hmm.
this applies to, only my situation. But I feel like everyone has something like that. And it's like it's sad that everyone is going through their own kind of personal trauma, but it's also very comforting that,
Yes.
not everyone is having the same thoughts that I'm having.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's the good and the bad. Like everyone is fighting a personal battle.
Yeah.
And to kind of like tell yourself that too, like I am prone to believing someone else, like, oh, like if a stranger and I both like cut our hands, I'd be like, oh shit, oh no, like you must be hurt.
Yes.
But it's like, oh, like I have pain too. It's not only about other people's kind
Yeah.
of perceptions, it's also like, oh right, I can feel
I
my
can
own
care
things
about
without.
me. Yes.
Yes, yeah, and like and care about me even not in relation to someone else, just like me, period. Like, yeah, I have a cut on my hand, and even if someone else thinks it's not bad on their hand, maybe mine is, you know?
Yes,
I don't know if that analogy
yeah.
works, but
No, quite honestly, that analogy was perfect because I'm so glad we're having this conversation, because
yeah.
when I was reading your book, I saw a lot of relation between my experience and yours. And a large part of me was or a large part of my journey to almost, not necessarily to acceptance, but to getting out of my head, was, like you said, quite literally realizing that everybody else is in their old world and nobody is looking at me, like nobody.
Yes.
Like, I just tripped. I am the last one walking behind my friends, and I just tripped. And I think that everybody saw me. And the truth
Yeah.
is that the person in the front is trying to make sure we get where we're going. The two in front of me are talking to each other, and I am the only one nervous about the fact that like nobody is waiting for an opportunity to judge me. Nobody is waiting for me to
Yes.
mess up so that they can say, aha, I knew it. Like,
Yeah, and like also like you are the main character in your life. So like
yes,
live it that way, and not like there's that audience that you are trying to
yes,
impress, or that like there is another someone else above you in your life that you need to like prove yourself to.
yes.
Like you just need to prove it to yourself. And yeah, and giving yourself great, or like laughing in that kind of situation, just being like, huh, like I tripped. Like not ignoring it, or not being ashamed, or not like, I don't know, overcompensating, just being like, oh, that happened.
That happened. Yes, yes, literally letting things exist just to exist. Like
Neutral.
yes, like you said, like you said about the cut. Okay, I cut myself, but so did somebody else. But in this moment, I need to put myself first. I think that was another huge part of it for me. Like, okay, I can care about other people. I can nurture other people. I can love and be concerned for other people, but I can't do any of that if I don't consider myself first. Well, why don't I consider myself first? Maybe because I know for me, it was like, okay, other people I may have thought other people deserved it more than me, or I may have conditioned myself to think, oh, you're a girl, you'll tough it out. Like, oh, you cut your hand, you'll tough it out, put a band-aid on it later. Meanwhile, the person next to me, it's like, oh my god, the poor baby cut their hand, and now go get a band-aid. Like, it's like, well, what
Yes.
about, they're
Where's your
fine.
band-aid?
Yes, like,
Yeah.
yeah. So no, that was a perfect analogy. Actually, it clicked for me.
Okay.
No,
I'm glad.
yeah, that's perfect. Um, and so before we wrap up, I wanted to know if there was anything that you feel like you wanted to say or share to the listeners. So our demographic, um we have young ladies, so like, teens, tweens, but then we have young adults around my age, so like 20s to 25, men and women. So like, is there anything you want to say or share with them before we close?
I guess I guess I want to clarify, because I am so in my head. I'm like, how am I going to be perceived? Like, was I going too ranty or preachy on anything?
No.
I kind of just want to emphasize, because I don't know, like, as I'm 35, so as someone maybe older than your demographic, I hope people know that when I talk about misogyny and feminism, and like kind of media and white men in power, it's not to say like all men must die. It's not to say like I that like you every man is terrible. It's these expectations of ourselves are bad for everyone. I don't know. It's just like it is misogyny, and like toxic masculinity and all of that. Like it's bad for everyone. Like
Yeah.
it pushes everyone into these excuse me, specific boxes that we don't need to stay in. And that
Yeah.
again applies to like physically, but also like, I don't know, the spaces that you occupy, or like even like the music that you like we should feel I don't know, to just like do what makes us happy and not feel like we need to be limited to these like shoulds of what a man should be or what a woman should be. Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
that's my fun. I'll end it with that because I don't want to keep going in the circles of the same thing.
No, that just literally opened the door because right, guys, we love you. We don't want to forget about you. And quite literally, right, the music that they listen to, the way the media portrays men is like men are supposed to have feelings, men are supposed to be big and strong, men are supposed to listen to love songs and love rom-coms, and that is just not reality. That quite literally snatches away a piece of humanity and joy
Hmm.
for men. So I'm glad you said that.
Yes.
That is something I could go on and on about. Tell us about the newsletter. Tell us about the mailing club, please.
Oh my gosh, you're so sweet. Thank you. So for the past 5 years, I've had a Patreon, and I just share like weekly comics and art there. And I have a tier where, because I am a like collector of all things retro and nostalgic and like paper stationery, paper ephemera. And I have too much to keep. So I have this mail club where I send out like every 2 months or so just fun like bundles of mail, like little like art that I've done. Fun like right now, vintage Valentines and like handmade Valentines are in the mail out to people. So that's on my Patreon, and that is patreon.com/SIO Gallagher.
Mhm.
CO. And that's kind of like my online name, CO Gallagher. And it's
Mhm.
funny because like Siobhan is hard to spell, so I was like SIO, shorten it, make it easy to spell, make it easy to like pronounce and for people to find me. And now I still get people being like, how do you pronounce CO? Like what is that? Is it Sh
Oh,
Gallagher? Anyways, so SIO Gallagher, that's yeah, I'm on Instagram as well. I'm constantly, yeah, like I draw every day and I love to just
oh
like share
wow.
what I'm drawing. So you can find that online.
That's beautiful and inspiring. We will link the Patreon and your Instagram in the show notes so that people can sign up for the mailing club because if you follow her on Instagram, she posts like the things that she will put in each mailing list. You also just curated some new stickers to be are
Oh
those
my
in the
gosh, yes. Yeah, it's just like
Oh,
just what I do for fun is like what I loved as a kid is just like colorful.
oh,
I
I
made
love
very
them.
simple little like colorful smiley stickers. I'll need tell me your address and I'll mail them to you.
Oh,
Yeah. And I think maybe
thank
you
you.
already I have your address somewhere already, but tell me again and I'll send you some.
Yes, okay, I'll send it to you because I'm like the stickers you already gave me. They're in the scrapbook, so don't even worry about
Oh my God,
it.
I am a big scrapbooker. Yeah, I
Oh,
am
I
a
love.
paper girly, and
Yeah.
I love fellow scrapbookers.
So yes, I will link the Patreon, I will link your Instagram and your website so that people know where they can access both for myself and your other books. Um
Yeah,
you,
I do a lot of like self-published zines and stuff too, so I have a shop with lots of that.
Yeah, yeah, so that you all can keep in contact with Siobhan because this is not a contact like the oh, you were just so full of light. So I
Oh
I
my
want
gosh,
to
thank you so
extend
much.
that light to the classmates. And thank you so much for just being here, taking the time to talk to me, talk to the people. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate this. Thank you so much. You have just made my day. You're so fun to talk
Oh.
with.
Oh, thank you. Thank
Yeah.
you. All right. Dang, my brain is so starstruck. Um Lord, if you like this episode, please like, share, subscribe, become a classmate. Follow us on Instagram. Follow me and follow Siobhan. All of that information will be in the show notes. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all next week.